I thought I was done for the season, but now we have a guest, a cat that has never been there where it grew up. So now this cat sits 2 nights now in a corner between the window and the heater. And only when I'm with her, I can make her now slowly on the second day do little excursions. So it seems it's kind of like in this kind of position, and then it touches something, comes back to me, and then goes a bit further. So leave their traces. And so that's how they kind of like, I guess, explore the environment and get familiar. We will see. It should be done after 3 days. But that made me thought about what role orientation plays in our practice, in our life. And I have to say, I'm not sure whether I run around like the first days being on a residency or going to a project. I think it depends. If you have a solid practice, this is objects and kind of like you're just the master of logistics of your practice. It doesn't change wherever you go. Then I think you have a stability where that is actually just not really relevant, whether you have to orient yourself or not, because you just ignore that as a possibility of a practice or a work. I think I would understand aesthetic practice as a indefinite tool to explore territories of uncertainty, topography, unknown topographies, but also on a social level to get in touch, get in contact with that, with something you have no idea. So I think it's instrumental for my practice, at least. So how do I do it? And I think that photography is actually seems kind of like do such a thing like marking points of interest surround you. You go back to them and then you build up I guess a memory or a relationship to it. I think there's such a thing like I'm not sure whether I think they're DNA marker. That's what I vaguely remember. That I get kind of like whenever you go back to these places, they're kind of clicked on. So this is now a lousy description. You have to look that up or whether it's really working. But it makes sense that certain informations are kind of like not accessible as long as you, or less easy accessible as long as you're not in the territory. And when you get then somewhere, I think it always takes a while. And then suddenly, oh, that information comes to the foreground. So that's an interesting perspective on neurology. And for practice, I think that's what I often like then, to stay in a place, in an exhibition area somewhere for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks or 3 months. I think that's where you actually take the time to make yourself acquainted to the area, to the territory, but also meet people and explore things. And that you can always fall back and have, of course, you have your practice in your backpack, and that can be then pulled out. So even that can be actually a helpful instrument to find orientation. So I don't want to dismiss that at all. But I think it's interesting, yeah, this exploring territory, exploring the unknown with walking, circling, putting out your fingers. And on the other side, you have a kind of like a studio-based practice that gives you the stability to then also during these kind of like situations, you can lean on and then bring them in and not just helicopter them into wherever you are. So I think orientation, I think, is an interesting parameter to be understood as a challenge, but also as the search to find points of orientation you can relate, you want to relate with your work to. And these are then, of course, also points. These can be also points for an audience. You can leave, not behind, but leave for an audience to be picked up. That's nämlich also an important point, that an audience needs the orientation where it is. A sea of just poetry, of disconnected kind of like utterings are kind of, it's impossible to actually deal with. So you need islands an audience can always land on to then swim into the unknown. Yeah. So we see whether I come up with something else. I watch the cat getting oriented, and then I see what to continue with. Otherwise, happy Christmas.